was a chilly October evening in 1988 when Mary Whittaker and her 9-year-old son, Tommy, set out for what was supposed to be a routine grocery trip. The small town of Pine Hollow, Maine, was quiet that day, the streets lined with amber and gold leaves falling from the dense pines surrounding the town. Neighbors later recalled seeing Mary drive off in her old station wagon, Tommy bouncing in the passenger seat, humming a tune he often sang on long drives. No one could have imagined that this ordinary evening would become the last anyone would see of them. Mary was known in town as a gentle, intelligent woman who kept to herself after her husband's sudden death years earlier. Tommy, on the other hand, was full of curiosity and mischief, always exploring the woods behind their home, despite Mary's warnings. That day, some neighbors noticed them taking a different route than usual, one that led deeper into the forest than anyone typically went. At the time, it seemed insignificant, a mother trying to avoid traffic or a shortcut, but in hindsight, it became one of the first ominous signs that something was terribly wrong. As hours passed and the sun dipped below the horizon, panic began to ripple through Pine Hollow. Friends called the Whittakers home repeatedly, but the phone rang unanswered. By nightfall, the local sheriff organized a search, combing through the forest with flashlights and hounds, calling out Mary and Tommy's names into the eerie silence. The pine trees, dense and towering, seemed to swallow their voices, leaving the searchers with only the rustling of the wind through the branches. Despite hours of searching, there was no trace, no footprints leading deeper into the woods, no sign of a struggle, nothing but the whispering trees. In the days that followed, the community tried to make sense of the disappearance. Posters were hung, local news stations covered the story, and volunteers joined organized search parties. Yet, as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, hope began to fade. Rumors swirled like the autumn leaves in the wind. Had they been abducted, or had they run away? Some whispered of forest spirits or an unseen menace that haunted the pines. Every lead seemed to vanish into thin air, leaving a growing sense of dread in the hearts of those who knew Mary and Tommy. The town of Pine Hollow would never forget the chilling night when mother and son simply disappeared, without a trace, without a word, and without any explanation. In the months following Mary and Tommy's disappearance, strange and unsettling clues began to surface, each one more perplexing than the last. The first was Tommy's worn backpack, discovered at the edge of the forest by a local hiker. It was smeared with mud and leaves, yet oddly undisturbed, as if someone had placed it there deliberately. Inside, a half-eaten sandwich and a small notebook filled with childish doodles remained untouched, frozen in time. For the authorities, it was a frustrating lead. Too little to explain a disappearance, too strange to ignore. For the townspeople, it was a chilling reminder that the forest held secrets no one could understand. Weeks later, a neighbor reported seeing a series of tiny footprints near the creek behind Mary's house. The footprints, unlike anything seen before, seemed to stop abruptly, vanishing into thin air among the thick underbrush. Some speculated that the soil had shifted naturally, while others whispered that someone or something had taken them without leaving a trace. Alongside these footprints, children's drawings began to appear nailed to trees, crude sketches of houses, faces, and symbols no one recognized. Some said the drawings were attempts at a message. Others feared they were warnings. Each new discovery deepened the mystery and fed the town's growing unease. Even the local animals seemed to react strangely around the forest near the Whitakers' home. Hikers reported deer running off in sudden panic, dogs barking at empty spaces, and owls screeching in the dead of night. Those who ventured close to the old trails spoke of a heavy silence, a weight pressing down, as though the woods themselves were aware of what had happened. For the police, these anecdotes were frustratingly anecdotal, impossible to prove, but for residents of Pine Hollow, they were evidence that something unnatural lurked in the pines. Fear grew with every unexplained sound, every shadow, and every trace that defied reason. Over the years, sporadic clues continued to appear, as if the Whitakers were leaving fragments of themselves behind. An old shoe was found wedged in a tree trunk, a broken pocket watch lay half buried near a creek, and faint scratch marks appeared on rocks that no one could explain. Each discovery reignited the search, only to end in disappointment. Despite decades of investigation, the pattern of these clues remained maddeningly elusive. Whoever, or whatever, was responsible seemed to be deliberately hiding, leaving behind a trail meant to confuse, frighten, and taunt those who dared to look too closely. The forest, with its whispering pines and shadowed trails, had become a living puzzle, teasing answers that no one could fully grasp. Fast forward to 2025, nearly 4 decades after Mary and Tommy vanished, and the Whitaker case had long been considered unsolvable, a tragic chapter of Pine Hollow's history that changed when Detective Sarah Langley, a young investigator with a reputation for solving cold cases, took a keen interest in the file. Unlike her predecessors, Sarah noticed details others had overlooked: the irregular trail markings, the scattered items in the forest, and cryptic notes in the old case files that hinted at patterns nobody had pieced together. She spent hours poring over photographs, police reports, and witness statements, slowly forming a theory that had escaped every investigator before her. The forest itself was hiding something significant, something deliberately concealed. Sarah's team brought modern technology into play. Drones with thermal imaging scouted the dense tree canopy, while ground-penetrating radar swept the forest floor for signs of human disturbance. Satellite images revealed faint anomalies in areas previously thought untouched, and old maps combined with GPS data pointed to a cluster of uncharted clearings hidden deep within the pines. Even the townspeople began to notice unusual activity: strange lights in the forest at night and unexplained noises that no one could identify. The sense that someone or something was watching, waiting, or guarding a secret intensified, creating a palpable tension that gripped both the investigators and the local community. The deeper Sarah dug, the more eerie connections emerged. Former hunters reported finding abandoned fire pits and remnants of supplies that couldn't be explained, while retired locals remembered sightings of a figure moving through the woods in the years following the disappearance. Every lead, no matter how old or obscure, seemed to converge on a single, heavily forested area that had never been fully explored. It was as if the forest itself had been holding its breath for decades, guarding a secret that no one had yet dared to uncover. And with each new discovery, the anticipation grew. The Whitaker mystery was no longer a cold case. It was a living puzzle, one that demanded answers before more time was lost. Deep in the forest, beneath layers of fallen pine needles and moss, Sarah's team discovered what no one had ever seen before: a faint outline of a concealed entrance, almost perfectly hidden from view. At first, it looked like nothing more than an overgrown depression in the ground, but careful probing revealed the metallic edge of a hatch. As the team cleared debris and pushed aside roots, a cold draft wafted from the opening, carrying a musty, earthy smell that hinted at decades of undisturbed secrecy. Sarah hesitated for a moment, feeling the weight of history pressing down on her. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath, daring them to descend. The ladder leading down into the bunker creaked under the investigators' weight, each rung echoing eerily in the darkness below. Once inside, they were confronted with a chamber frozen in time. Dust-covered toys, scattered clothes, and old journals were spread across the floor, untouched for decades. The journals, surprisingly well preserved, revealed a meticulous record of Mary's life underground, her struggles, her strategies for survival, and her desperate attempts to shield Tommy from an unseen threat. There were drawings, notes, and even maps, some marking hidden tunnels and storage areas within the bunker. The eerie precision of it all suggested someone had lived with constant fear, anticipating danger at every turn, yet determined to survive in absolute secrecy. As the investigators explored further, the bunker revealed its complexity. Beyond the main chamber, narrow corridors led to small rooms, some containing evidence of food caches, makeshift bedding, and even faded fingerprints on walls that had not been touched in decades. The air was thick with the silence of history, broken only by the occasional drip of water echoing through the passageways. Everything pointed to a life lived entirely in hiding, yet hints of something, or someone, lurking outside the walls of the bunker made the hairs on the back of their necks stand on end. Every object, every detail, seemed deliberately placed, as if Mary had anticipated discovery long before anyone ever returned to the forest. As Sarah's team ventured deeper into the hidden bunker, they uncovered a smaller, more fortified chamber concealed behind a false wall. The air grew colder and the darkness more oppressive, as if the very walls were holding back decades of secrets. Inside, they found unsettling evidence. Skeletal remains of several individuals, their identities unknown, along with personal belongings carefully arranged as though they had been cataloged. Among the items were toys, scraps of clothing, and handwritten notes, the eerie echo of lives lost or trapped in ways no one could have imagined. The sight left the team shaken, the reality of what had occurred in this hidden place far surpassing anything they had anticipated. The journals Mary had left behind offered fragmented explanations, though they raised even more questions than answers. She wrote of a relentless presence that had haunted her and Tommy, a figure who seemed to know their every move and forced them into hiding. There were accounts of terrifying encounters, the sound of someone or something lurking just beyond the bunker walls, and desperate strategies for evading capture. The entries hinted that Mary had hoped the bunker would remain undiscovered forever, a sanctuary that could shield them from a menace no one else could comprehend. The meticulous detail in her writings made it clear she had lived in constant terror, yet she had maintained hope, recording everything in the faint hope that one day someone might understand. Even more disturbing were the signs that this threat may not have been fully eliminated. Marks on the walls suggested the captor had returned, or perhaps continued to monitor the bunker after it had been abandoned. Scattered items indicated that Mary and Tommy were not alone in their ordeal, and some belongings hinted at others who had been trapped or hidden in similar ways. It became increasingly clear that the Whitakers disappearance was part of something larger, something sinister that extended beyond the forest and the decades that had passed. Each discovery tightened the grip of fear, leaving Sarah and her team with a chilling realization. The secret they had uncovered was far darker and more dangerous than they, or anyone in Pine Hollow, had ever imagined. As authorities continued to document the bunker, the forest around Pine Hollow seemed to grow quieter, almost expectant, as if it too was holding its breath. The Whittakers' fate was finally uncovered, but the truth raised more questions than answers. Who had forced them into hiding? Were there others still out there, lurking in the shadows of those dense pines? And most terrifying of all, what had been watching them all along, waiting decades for someone to discover the secret? Detective Sarah Langley stepped back from the entrance, feeling the weight of history and fear pressing in. The case was solved, yet the forest retained its secrets. Pine Hollow would remember Mary and Tommy not just as victims, but as guardians of a horrifying truth buried beneath the pines. A truth that some whispered should never have been unearthed. And as the wind rustled through the towering trees that night, it carried a faint whisper, an unsettling reminder that some mysteries are never truly gone. The forest had given up one of its darkest secrets, but for those brave enough to venture too close, it might not be finished yet.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.